everyone. Happy Friday. Sorry I'm a bit late. I was giving a talk and I just got back. So, first of all, let's do the big news, at least for me. We are now over 80,000 YouTube subscribers. I mean, that is amazing. I can't tell you how thankful I am. We're going to keep building. I said my goal is 100,000. We're getting there. We went from 70 to 80 real fast. So thank you all. If you are a subscriber, thank you for being a subscriber. Brett Green says 81,000 now. Man, we're growing fast. So thank you. There are a couple ways that you can support me. If you're new to the channel, first of all, welcome. Hope everybody is good. What I do is I make videos, usually about 8 videos a week, and this Friday live stream, independent, calling balls and strikes, and also independent from sort of the big media bosses, just telling you like it is. So if you can support that, I very much appreciate it. You can do it here by becoming a subscriber. You can go to see that little button in the corner there, the super chat button. It's a $ in a rectangle. You can hit that. You can make a donation. If you make a donation today, I will make sure your question gets asked. I'll bump it up to the top of the questions. If you can't donate, don't worry about it. I will try to get and answer as many questions as I can. The other thing you can do is go to Buy Me a Coffee. There's a link in my YouTube bio where you can just donate to me. To support what I'm doing. One last pitch, Substack. It's my newsletter. I write it every single day. chriscillizza.substack.com. It's called So What? You can get probably 50% of the content for free, 50% you got to pay for. It's $6 a month or $60 for a year. Again, independent journalism is booming, but it can only support so many people, and I want to be one of the people that make it. So I really hope you can support me. All right, let's get to your questions. Here we go. Sherry Zimmerman, congrats to Pope Leo, who in the vein of Francis, understanding that welcoming all is the gift the world needs and a healing balm of reconciliation and grace. Well, Sherry, that's a nice way to start things off. Thank you. John C, really curious to know why there is no Mitch McConnell equivalent of the Dems. No one with the power and calculus of him wielding strength, even the minority. Any thoughts? I would say that Mitch McConnell, whether you like him or hate him, is a really gifted Senate strategist and also sort of political strategist. And there's a reason there's one of him. I mean, there's not like a bunch of Mitch McConnells in the Republican caucus either. So I would say, it's not, they're not all that common. Chuck Schumer, I think, had a lot of strategic acumen. I always thought Schumer was smart about sort of both his own politics and the Democratic caucus's politics. He's lost a little bit on his fastball. I don't think there's any question about that. But you're right. There isn't sort of a strategist, a grand strategist mucking things up for Republicans on the Democratic side. I honestly think some of that, John, is the result of the fact that Democrats don't really have a leader at this point. They don't really have like one person who's like, we're gonna row in this direction. And I think that does have some impact on all of this. So we'll see. Someone I think who's super interesting in the Senate is Chris Murphy from Connecticut. I think he might run for president. He is very much in we need to block Republicans on all fronts at all times. Now, Schumer has not taken that approach, but Chris Murphy's an interesting guy. Whether he stays in the Senate or runs for runs for president, he could stay in the Senate and run for president. That's a guy to keep an eye on. Patrick Murray, hey Chris, who is your favorite founding father and why? Congrats on 80,000 subs. Thank you so much, Patrick. I cannot tell folks how gratifying it is because we literally built this from nothing. It's just me making these videos, and to have 81,000 people be like, yeah, I'll subscribe. It's incredibly meaningful. So thank you. My favorite founding father. That's a good question. I'm looking at I'm looking at all the founding father biographies I have. I think probably John Adams. I like that he was a letter writer. I like that he was, he's not George Washington, the kind of like big hero, military hero. He was just a guy who kind of got by his brain. So I think probably John Adams. Who's yours? Definitely not Jefferson. I'm not a Jefferson guy. Let's see. Sam's still a Cillizza fan. Hey, Chris, loved your airport discussion with Chuck Todd. Since you travel a lot, what are your travel do's and don'ts? So For people who missed it, I do a weekly podcast with Chuck Todd over at my Substack, former NBC Meet the Press host. We talked about our favorite and least favorite airports. And my favorite, I'm trying to remember what my favorite airport was. Maybe Columbia, South Carolina. I love that one. Salt Lake City, really good one. Des Moines, good airport. My travel do's and don'ts. Sam, I try not to check a bag. I always have my headphones on from the second I get out of the car, so that I'm kind of not. I don't love to engage with people on the plane. Let's just leave it at that. And always ask people, if you can, who are from where you're going, whether they live there now or they used to, where you should eat, so you don't just go to touristy places, which is lame. Okay, Julio J, I like this one. He says, you're now Dr. Chris Frankenstein. I like that I've become a doctor, whose job is to create a winning Democratic 28 candidate. Pick 3 people for demographics background, number 1, charisma speech, number 2, policies, number 3. Who would you choose? Ruben Gallego for demographics and background, senator from Arizona. Charisma and speech, either AOC or Pete Buttigieg. And then policies, maybe Andy Bashir. That person I've just created would not win a Democratic primary, but I think would be a good general election candidate. Craig Skeptic. Craig, thank you so much for your donation. Craig says, no question. Congrats to 81,000 subscribers. On to 100,000. I've been here since 20,000. I do best to tell 5 friends. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your donation. Thank you for your good wishes. Thank you for your subscription. And thank you for telling people about what I'm building. It truly, the growth of Substack and YouTube, and honestly, YouTube is growing like bonkers right now for me. It's one of the coolest things that I've had. Like I don't even have good words. Normally I can talk a lot. I don't have good words to describe it, but Craig, thank you for the donation. It's much appreciated, and your support as well. Brett Green. Hey, Chris, what's going on with David Hogg and the DNC? Are they going to remove him? Is he not going to primary Dems now, et cetera, et cetera? So we're in a little bit of a holding pattern there, Brett. The DNC is going to try to change the rules at their next meeting, which I think is this summer, to basically say you can't, if you are part of the DNC leadership, which David Hogg is, he's the vice chairman, you can't work for any organization. You have to support incumbents. You have to support Democratic incumbents, it's obviously aimed at David Hogg. It's not saying him specifically. Now, right now, that's not the rule, so he can continue doing what he's doing. I have not seen him want to back down. He seems totally fine to fight the fight he's fighting. So we'll see. But right now, we're in a little bit of a holding pattern until the DNC tries to formally change their rules. Cillizza fan. Love, great name. Although popes aren't politicians, would you consider Pope Leo the 14th more center-left, moderate, or center-right? I can't figure it out. Well, I think it's hard, right? Because he's not a politician. So I would say you have to think of him in the context of the church, right? So in the church context, like he's pro-immigration generally, and certainly pro-treating immigrants kindly, right? So is Pope Francis. That's like a leftish position right now in America, but I don't think that's because he's a lefty. I think it's because that's kind of church doctrine and the teachings of Jesus. He was a registered Republican in Illinois and voted in Republican primaries, so there's that. Honestly, it doesn't strike me that he's like one way or the other. The fact that our political system is such that we feel like we have to cram him into like one of these existing categories is a little bit depressing, honestly. I think he is more progressive than Pope Benedict and less progressive than Pope Francis. That's my initial read on what I've read about him. Excuse me. Jack Moon. Hey, Chris, I hope you and your family are doing well. Thank you for checking. They are. I was wondering why Democrats are more hesitant to support Federman this time than the last, specifically during his 2022 campaign, his last Walter Reed visit. Well, so, I do, Jack, I do think some of it has to do with the fact that Federman back then in 2022 was running a campaign to win a Senate seat Democrats very much wanted to win in Pennsylvania, and they thought he was going to be this sort of liberal champion. Now he's a much more moderate voice, at least on immigration, certainly, and generally speaking on working with Trump. So there's a little less interest in kind of strongly backing him. Again, the thing that depresses me is like not everything should be about politics, right? This should be about like, is John Federman okay? And for people who don't know what we're talking about, New York Magazine came out with a piece last week that had a long email that his former chief of staff had written to his former doctor, or his current doctor at Walter Reed, saying there was some concerning behavior on Federman. There have been a series of stories since then suggesting he's been in confrontations and like it doesn't look great. So my thing is, let's make sure the guy is okay and not a danger to himself and other people, and then maybe we can talk about the politics of it. We shouldn't just immediately jump to the politics. But why was the left behind him more then than they are now? One, because he was running in a contested Senate race and they wanted to win it. And two, because they thought he was going to be more liberal than he has turned out to be. Let's see. Pool Boy Dave, will you do any videos or talk about the changing of policies between Democrats and the GOP, i.e. healthy eating, taxes, wars, etc.? So Dave, I try to do some policy stuff. I am not a policy guy. I did not work for a think tank prior to doing this. I covered campaign journalism for media outlets. So policy is not my sort of like strongest suit. When I'm going to do policy, I'm going to do it like I did earlier this week with this crypto, Trump and crypto, where I'm trying on one very specific thing. I'm trying to understand it and explain it to people. I'm not going to go through like a policy one-on-one. Democrats used to think this and now they think this. Republicans used to think this and now they think that. That's probably less likely. It'll probably be more policy one-offs. I hope that makes sense. Human NC, do you think independents like Dan Osborne could run in Midwestern states like Nebraska, Iowa, and Kansas and win? Well, Dan Osborne did run as an independent in Nebraska in 2024, and he lost, albeit relatively closely, but he did lose. I think they could if there's no Democratic nominee. So in that Nebraska race, Democrats did not field a candidate. So I think the Democratic brand is pretty toxic in those places you mentioned, Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas. And so it makes sense to run as an independent, even if you probably would caucus with Democrats while you were in the Senate. The issue is, will the Democratic Party allow that, or would they nominate someone who would be the Democratic nominee, thereby splitting the Democratic vote, and you'd probably lose. So it's not a bad idea. I just don't know if it would work in practice. Franz George Leopold Pagel, my favorite name. You talked about Melania Trump this week. Is their marriage okay, and does Trump care? I'm not a relationship psychologist or analyst, so I don't know if their relationship is okay or not. I would say they live pretty separate lives. They are far from the only presidential couple who has ever lived pretty separate lives, but they live obviously separate lives. She spends most of her time in New York City and Palm Beach, Florida. He is obviously in Washington mostly, and then at Mar-a-Lago. So, if it works for them, it works for them. But I did do that Melania Trump video because I did think it was interesting. She was up in Washington on Thursday rolling out a commemorative stamp of former First Lady Barbara Bush. And she just has not been there much. There's an amazing New York Times story that came out earlier this week that she's only been in D.C. 14 days out of the 110 or whatever that Donald Trump has been president. She doesn't live at the White House. And her reasoning back in the day when he first got elected in 2016 was, our son, Barron, he's young. I think he was 10 at that point. I really want to keep him out of the limelight, really want to focus on that. Well, he's 19 now and in college. So that doesn't seem to be the reason anymore. I guess maybe she just doesn't like Washington. But so I'm not an expert on their relationship, but it is very different. Travis Lindsay, do you think the Federman reactions have more to do with Biden's health or his move to the center and aligning more with Trump? A little bit of both. I know people hate that answer, but I do think, Travis, it's a little of both. I do think, at least from the media perspective, I think a lot of reporters, whether they'll admit it like me or not, are disappointed in themselves in terms of why they didn't ask more questions of the Biden team about his health and mental and physical deterioration. So that's obviously going to impact the next time we see someone where there are reports of maybe there are problems with this guy. People are going to ask harder questions. I do also think that some of the stuff from the left talking about primarying him in 2028 and Connor Lamb, the member of Congress who ran against him in a primary and lost last time, running again. That's obviously just about the fact that they want Fetterman to be someone that he doesn't want to be, at least right now. I wrote about this. I may have said it too. I think a lot of liberals thought that they were electing the next Bernie Sanders in Fetterman, and instead they got the next Joe Manchin. That's a little bit of an oversimplification. He's never been as liberal as Sanders, and he's never been as conservative voting record-wise as Manchin, but you get the idea. And so I do think there's some disappointment there, and I think that has some to do with it. Matthew White. Matthew, I'm going to read this question, but I'm not enough of an expert to answer it. Why do you think Russia never truly became a real ally of the West, even after the fall of the Soviet Union? I'm not enough of an expert in Russian history and sort of Russian mentality to answer that. I will tell you, I'm listening to an amazing podcast on The Rest is History, my favorite podcast, about Peter the Great and his birth and rise to power. So I'm learning about Russian history, but I don't know enough about it to speak to that question. Mr. Wolf, who do you think will be the natural successor to Trump in terms of charisma and policy? Well, that's part of the problem. I mean, I would say the three people that seem to jump to mind are J.D. Vance, obviously the vice president, Marco Rubio, who I think Trump is extremely high on, as he's now the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor, and Donald Trump Jr. Those are the three that make the most sense to me. Like he would want to hand it off to. I don't know if any of them can match him in terms of natural charisma. I always say this, whether you like Donald Trump or you don't like him, the guy's pretty charismatic. So I don't know, but it's a good question. And I think that'll be the question of 2028. Let me take a quick pause and say for people, we're about 15 minutes in. For people who are just coming in, thank you. Thank you for taking your time out of your Friday. It's a dreary day here in DC, a lot of rain, but thank you for taking your time. A couple things. If you can, on this video in particular, just give it a thumbs up, folks. We've only got 61. We've got 200 people on this. So just give it a thumbs up when you come in. Just thumbs it up. That helps me. The other thing is hit that subscribe button. That's easy. It's free, and it helps me to grow my following. We're now over 81,000. And then the last thing is anyone can ask a question in this chat that runs alongside. If you want to make a donation to me, I, number one, very much will appreciate it. You can do it via the super chat button, which is the $ in the rectangle at the bottom right of your screen. If you do that, I will make sure your question gets bumped up to the top and answered. All right, let's keep going. Maxwell Feiner, do you have any thoughts on Bernie Sanders using a private jet to get around on his anti-oligarchy tour? I mean, it's not great. Look, he's going, they have a tight schedule. He's going in between places where there are not a ton of direct flights. So I understand logistically why he would do it. But yes, it doesn't look great if you're saying fighting oligarchy and then you're traveling on private planes. Here's the dirty little secret. Everyone likes private planes. If you've ever flown on a private plane, and I've done it, I think once, it's amazing. You don't have to like check your bags. You just walk up on the tarmac, you get on it. It's amazing. So I get it from a logistics and a comfort and ease standpoint, but it's not the best look for Bernie Sanders. I mean, let's be honest. Theo Warner. Theo, thank you so much for your donation. Very much appreciated. I promise it will go to a good cause, which is independent journalism. Theo says, I recall that USMCA was NAFTA with a few tweaks, despite NAFTA being the worst deal in the history of deals. In other words, no big deal. Is this the case with the recent trade deal with the UK? Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think you're going to see a lot of this, which is like in the next couple weeks and months, which is Donald Trump sort of declaring victory on these trade deals and insisting his reciprocal tariffs worked, but the like nitty gritty not being all that much different from what we already have, like maybe slightly more advantageous for America, but not massively more advantageous. The thing I would say about the UK deal is like, we don't even know that many details about it right now. Like it's a framework. It's not like the actual deal. So I don't want to speak too much to it, but yeah, I think the likelihood is Donald Trump will declare victory, Keir Starmer will declare victory, and the actual deal will look a lot like what our trade deals with the United Kingdom have looked like in the past. That would be my guess. Thomas Davenport, what do you think will be the results if Trump tariffs the film industry? Well, Thomas, I don't even know how he would do it. Like, is this films that are shot, at least in part, outside the U.S.? Are they films financed outside the US? Are they films that are only run outside the US? Like, it just logistically seems really hard. My guess is it's never, ever going to happen. It's one of those things that somebody was like, you know what we should do? We should force people to make more movies in the United States. And he was like, that's a good idea. Let's put a tariff on it. Let's see if it actually comes to pass. J. Jordan 00. Chris, are some GOP senators feeling more confident in saying no to Trump's unqualified nominees? Opposing the last DC Attorney General pick should have been a no-brainer. So you mean the U.S. Attorney for DC, Ed Martin? It's a good question, Jay. It's something I go back and forth on. So if for people who haven't been following the story, Ed Martin is a guy who has defended a lot of the January 6th defendants. He said a lot of things publicly that are very questionable about that day. Tom Tillis, North Carolina senator, Republican, came out and said, I'm not going to support this guy. And then basically Trump pulled his nomination a couple days later. Are people getting more, on the Republican side, getting more willing to cross Trump? Maybe slightly. What I would say is, like with any other president who is a lame duck, like Trump is, can't run again, and whose popularity with the public, overall general public, was in the low 40s, I would expect more breaks. But this is Trump, right? And so he kind of enforces loyalty and remains pretty popular with Republican voters, which is who Republican elected officials care the most about. So I don't know. I'm kind of keeping an eye on that. I did think that was an interesting development. I'm glad you noted it. So let's see. His tax package is coming up. It's like, okay, well, how is that going to play out? And are Republicans going to revolt from that? And what does it look like? So we'll see. We'll see. I always hesitate to make too many conclusions based on like one event. Dr. Always First. What do you think about Trump saying in that interview that he does not intend to run in 2028, mention Vance and Rubio specifically? Can MAGA live post-Trump, Don Jr.? So he did in the Meet the Press interview, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, he did specifically name J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio as people who could take over, he could hand it off to. And he did, I think, much more definitively than he has in the past, rule out running in 2028. Now, he didn't totally rule it out because he's never going to totally rule anything out, particularly if it's advantageous for him. But I do think it is worth noting that he named Vance and Rubio in there. I think that Trump is genuinely divided about who kind of should inherit his political legacy. I think Rubio and Vance are two people he really likes. Picked one for VP. The other guy's the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor. And then there is the Don Jr. X factor of like, well, he's his actual son. Does he want to hand it off to him? The other question, so we don't know the answer there, but I think those three are the names that you should think about. The other question I have is, can he hand it off to someone else, right? Like, there's a difference between saying like, okay, this person is now my political heir, and like voters actually saying, okay, we're going to vote for this guy. Like, there is no Donald Trump waiting out there, Donald Trump Sr. waiting out there, right? Who has the like blend of like reality TV and fame and wealth and kind of celebrity. Even Don Jr. doesn't really have that. So it's like, can he hand it off or not? And I think that's like a central question of 2028. Sean Donahue, has Trump effectively cleared the field in New York for Elise Stefanik? How much of a chance would she have against Kathy Hochul? So he has tried to clear the field for Elise Stefanik to run for governor, Sean, but he hasn't totally yet. So if you notice this week, Trump endorsed Mike Lawler, member of Congress, for his reelection race in the House. Lawler is the guy who, before Elise Stefanik appeared on the scene here, was going to run for governor against Kathy Hochul. So Trump is basically saying like, hey man, stay put. Now, Lawler does represent one of 3 Republican districts that Kamala Harris carried in 2024. So that's going to be a tough hold, even if he's there. It's probably a loss if he's not there. So there's some motivation for Republicans to try to keep him there. Hochul, I think she is vulnerable. I mean, the numbers I've seen, polling numbers I've seen of her, has her underwater. Her approval rating is lower than her disapproval rating. It is New York, though. And while everyone talked about Lee Zeldin and how close he came to beating Hochul in 2022, he lost by 5 points. Now, he didn't lose by 50 points, but he lost by 5 points. It wasn't like a 1-point race. I do think she's vulnerable. I think she probably winds up being the Democratic nominee. She may get primary, but I think she's probably the Democratic nominee. And, I think Stefanik would have an okay chance statewide, but I don't think it's a 50-50 race. I think it's like, my guess is in a year like 2026 looks like it's shaping up to be, and Stefanik is the nominee, 53-45. Hochul gets reelected. H says, will Senator Federman quit? I don't think so. I don't know that I have not seen a lot of calls for him to quit. By the way, we are at 223 people on here live. That makes me so happy. If all of you please hit that thumbs up button for me, just do me that favor. I don't think there are calls on him to quit yet, because I think the question is like, mentally, is he doing okay? If an employee came to you and said, if an employee was acting a little bit strange or a little bit different, I don't think you'd be like, you're fired. You'd be like, is there a way we can get you some help? So I don't think he will quit, although he is unpredictable. So like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I really don't know. I'm not expecting that, but John Fetterman does and this has nothing to do with the current state of his mental health, which I don't know. He's always been a little bit unpredictable. That's kind of who he is. That's why people are drawn to him. So, I don't want to make a prediction on it, but I don't think there are calls for him to quit right now. I think most people are like, is he okay? And then secondarily, is there a primary against him in 2028? Theo Warner, Theo, you rock. Another donation, hugely kind of you. Theo says, Larry David or Bill Maher? So I'm more of a Larry David guy, just in terms of his overall approach. I will tell you, though, and if anyone can help me with this, I'd very much appreciate it. People come up to me all the time and say, you really have to be on Real Time with Bill Maher. And I would love to do it, but I don't know the Bill Maher people. So if anybody knows anyone connected to Bill Maher, because I'd love to be on the show. It's a really popular show. He's an interesting, thoughtful guy. I thought him going to have dinner with Trump was fine. I was not on Larry David's side on that. It was not like having dinner with Hitler. I just don't agree with those comparisons. So if anybody has an in with Bill Maher or knows a producer with Bill Maher, shoot me a note, cillizzac@gmail.com, because I'd love to talk to him. So I'm a Larry David lifestyle guy. Like, I don't like to go to things. I don't like that many people, but I did not like that op-ed. I thought it was way over the top that it's like having dinner with Hitler. Yeah. Hold on. I'm scrolling through. I did that. Really knocking them out today. The Good Noodle 23. Can we get another sports analogy beside the balls and strikes, no matter who the batter is? LOL, not all umpires are good, i.e. Angel Hernandez. And they added, not saying you're not doing good, love your work. So I like that metaphor. I know it's annoying. I know the analogy is annoying. If you watch every video, you're like, oh my God, the guy with the balls and strikes matter. But a lot of people are new. A lot of people are just coming in and they're like, who is this guy? So I kind of got to remind them of that, I feel like. So I get it's annoying, but I kind of like that analogy. If you have a better sports analogy, I'm open to it. But the other thing I always say, and I think this is important too, independent means independent from sort of big media companies and billionaires, kind of like operating at their whim, but also independent from always siding with Republicans or always siding with Democrats. So that's not an analogy, but I do talk about that a lot too. Jack Moon says, disclaimer, it does not buy Chris a coffee. Yeah, so buy me a coffee sounds like you're buying me a coffee, obviously, but all it is a way to donate to me. It's a site. I have it set up. It's buymeacoffee.com/Cillizza, I think, but you can find the link on my YouTube bio page. It's basically just a way to support me. You want to make a $50 donation, and some people have, which is amazing. You want to donate, I'd love to have you there. It's just another thing I set up as a way to try to fund what I'm doing. Thanks, Jack. It might go to me buying a coffee, but it probably won't. Marlon B. Hey, Chris, thank you for your work. How likely do you think it will be we will see a foreign-born U.S. president someday in the future coming from a 20-year-old dreamer in Germany? Well, it's in the Constitution that you got to be born in the U.S. And I remember when John McCain was running for president, there were some people saying he couldn't because he was born in the Panama Canal Zone. His father was military, obviously. But the Panama Canal Zone was a U.S. protectorate or U.S. property, technically. So it was not. But Marlon, I don't think that's going to happen anytime in my lifetime. But I'm 49. I'm old. So you're 20. Maybe it will happen in your lifetime. I don't know. Duxtons, do you think Democratic leadership will be a huge factor for the upcoming midterms? I don't totally know what you. Oh, so I guess you don't mean leadership in like the particular people who are members of the leadership. Now you mean Democratic leadership generally? Not really. Again, midterm elections are a referendum on the party in power, and Republicans are the party in power. They have the White House, they have the House, and they have the Senate. I think that midterm is very likely to turn on, do you like Donald Trump and want to continue what he's doing, or do you want to put a check on him? I would suggest right now, polling suggests voters want to put a check on him, which is why I think Democrats will probably take control of the House. It's a very narrow majority in 2026. Now, 2028, though, is a very different thing. A presidential election is not about a check on the president necessarily. It's about, do you want this guy or this party, or do you want the other side? So I think Democrats have a lot of work to do on that before 2028, but they may not have to do it in 2026. Michael Gates. Hey, Chris, you keep saying that all presidents enjoy the job and want to keep it, even though it demands so many sacrifices. Why so many people want it and just can't let go when they get it? Because there's so much power and prestige attached to it. I mean, if you're not the most powerful person in the world, you're among the most powerful people in the world. Every word you say is consumed. It moves stock markets. It moves other economies. It moves other governments. I just think you're at the top of the heap. If you're into politics, then being president is what you aim at. And I think having that much power and that much authority is not the kind of thing that most people say, like, you know what, I'm good. So yes, it does require sacrifices more now than ever because you're such a public figure. And I think the scrutiny on you and the villainization of you on either side is extremely strong, but you still have so much power. My friend Justin Bank. Hey, Justin. Chris, do you have any initial thoughts on how an American pope might impact the American political discourse implicitly and explicitly? Well, Justin, so I have thought about this some. I do think it is okay. So let's talk about like the 5 most influential roles in the world. Okay, among those 5, and we can debate what they all are, but among those 5, I think most people would put American presidency and the Pope. Right? The fact that we have an American president who is expressly trying to rejigger our stance in the world, whether that's on the economy vis-a-vis tariffs and trade, whether that's militarily in terms of what we pay in, who we protect, and what we pay into things like the United Nations or NATO. The fact that we have that, and then in one of the other 5 most prominent and influential jobs in the world, we now have an American Pope who has spoken out on immigration, in ways that are critical of the American president, who is now in a global job. It seems to me that it has some impact on how the Pope Leo XIV was picked. I think the Cardinals have to look at it and be like, maybe this is a counterweight. An American as Pope is a counterweight to this American president in terms of what role America needs to play in the world, whether it's morally, whether it's economically, or whether it's militarily. How much does that bleed over to the U.S.? I don't know. The U.S. has 6% of Roman Catholic population. It's a very small chunk of the Catholic Church more broadly. I don't know, but I do think that those 2 people for the next few years will be in a conversation. Pope Leo XIV and Trump will be in a conversation of sorts, even if they don't actually sit down and talk, a conversation about what should America be in the world. I hope that makes sense, Justin. Paul Olson, 0 to 81,000 is one fast F1. I know, man. 0 to 81,000 in 1 year. Let's see. WJK, any research to compare the number of court cases lost, jurisdictions, number of presidents that appointed the judges, etc., Trump versus other modern presidents? It seems this term is on the historic pace. So, WJK, I posted something, and I'll see if I can find it, but search back through my Twitter feed, X feed, whatever. I posted something. It's a chart that shows the number of lawsuits filed against the Trump administration versus the first this Trump administration versus the first Trump administration versus the Biden administration, et cetera. It's like off the charts. Now, that chart, I think, kind of works both ways. If you're a liberal, you say, yeah, many more things have been filed because this guy is like utterly lawless. If you're a Republican or a Trump supporter, you say, yeah, this is classic lawfare against Donald Trump. They are using the instruments of the judiciary to try to penalize this guy unfairly. So it's definitely higher than his first term, definitely higher than Biden, definitely higher than Obama. But what it means is like a whole other thing. Cole W. Senator Chris Murphy is making the media rounds. Looks like he will be running. Yeah, I do think Chris Murphy will probably run for president in 2028. He is very much on the left and on the we need to fight Donald Trump at all times on all things. I think he's a really talented politician. He was a guy who spent time in the House, now in the Senate. He's from obviously a pretty Democratic state, my home state, Connecticut. I don't think a lot of people know who he is. So I think he's got a name ID problem. He's definitely not as well known as another prominent progressive, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But I do think he might run. And by the way, for folks, if they say like, hey, you skipped me, I'm trying to get to people who have not asked questions, and then I'm going to circle back to people who have already asked questions that I've answered. I hope that I'm trying to get to as many new people as possible. Sam Schmidt. Chris, is it a new phenomenon that candidates that do well in primaries are poor in general elections? No, Sam. I mean, that's been true for a long time, certainly as long as I've been covering politics, which is what you need in a primary, which is kind of to appeal to the base of your party, Democrat or Republican, is not what you need in a general election, which is to reach out to people who are less political, less partisan. As the two bases have gotten more polarized and more extreme in their views, the move back to the center for the general election has become harder and harder. That's definitely changed. But no, it's been true for a long time that sometimes the best candidate in a primary to win a primary is not your best general election nominee. Martin says, we appreciate you, Chris. Thanks, Martin. That's so nice of you. Let's see. Shabad Springfield. I remember you made a video before Trump's medical exam. How did the results compare to what you expected, both overall and specifically in comparison to Biden? Was hoping for a follow-up video. Shoot, I dropped the ball. I should have done a follow-up video. Look, Donald Trump has very carefully managed his health. He is an older guy. He is overweight. I think we learned from his first term, he is a candidate for some heart disease potentially down the line. And he's very vain. I mean, that's the other thing. He's a vain guy, which is not new to him as president. But so I think, look, the report basically said like he's in pretty good health. There was some spin in there about like he keeps fit through golf. I mean, he rides around in a golf cart. Like he's not exerting himself in a cardiovascular way. Now that said, look, I think that Joe Biden was struggling more with his age than his White House let on. Now, I don't know. I don't think there's some secret Parkinson's or dementia or Alzheimer's diagnosis that they kept hidden. I don't think there's something like that. But it does seem to me that like watching him and listening to him, there was more there than the medical report offered on Biden. Maybe that's true with Trump too. Look, he's a 78-year-old man, right? I mean, like your chances of having some things wrong with you at 78 are higher than at 28 or 38 or 48. Same is true with Biden at 82. So it's not, unfortunately, I think we are backsliding in terms of transparency and openness about presidents and presidential candidates' medical histories. 20 years ago, we were releasing those things. We are now not, and I don't think that's great. Livia Skolsky. Livia, thank you so much for your donation. And Livia says, enjoy your insight and commentary. That's so kind of you. Thank you for your support. It means a ton. Sarah Might, should the next Democratic president follow the Trump precedent to get things done or try and reset the presidency back to norms and standards? So that's a really interesting question. I tend to think politics is a copycat game. And I think sort of Trump has succeeded by being willing to push norms or break norms. And so I'm not sure those norms ever go back to normal. That was what Biden offered in 2020. Look, we're gonna go back to sort of the way things used to be. I don't know if that's a compelling argument to voters anymore. I think they think politics is broken, Democrats and Republicans, and they want people who will acknowledge that and have fixes that haven't been tried before. So I don't know that kind of a let's just return to normal will work. I don't know that you're going to get a copycat of Donald Trump, either on the Republican side or the Democratic side. Again, he's kind of a one and only. There's not a lot of Donald Trumps out there, whether you like him or you hate him. But I do think a lot of the norm stuff, the genie's out of the bottle on that. Let's see. Kitchen Mensch. That's totally different. Kitchen Mensch. Canadian, congratulations on 80,000. Thank you. That's so kind of you. I am not blaming Canada. Tim Manto. I hope Rubio becomes the presidential candidate for the GOP. Yeah, I think there's a possibility of that. Look, I do think if I had to pick today, I would pick J.D. Vance. Sitting vice president, he is going to do everything he can to make himself as prominent as possible and as close to possible with Trump so that when 2028 comes around, it's like an obvious pick. Trump may not, I don't think Trump will just endorse Vance. I think, particularly if Rubio and other people are in it, I think he might hold off on that. But I do think Rubio is a talented guy. And clearly, even though he was hugely critical of Trump when he ran in 2016, he's clearly ingratiated himself with Trump now, and Trump trusts him. Will that last through 2028? I mean, who knows? Like, Trump, again, ultimately totally unpredictable. So who knows? So we'll see. But the same goes for Vance. Will Trump trust and like Vance in 2028? Don't know. David Johnson. Hey, Chris, curious about your thoughts about the reemergence of former President Joe Biden in his interviews he has done so far. Not good. I thought his interview on The View was bad. I think when you were asked about your mental acuity and your wife has to kind of finish your answer because you're kind of trailing off, that is not a good look. I wrote about this last night in my newsletter over at Substack. Biden basically threw Kamala Harris under the bus in that interview. He said he wasn't surprised that Trump had won. He said, and I think this is a vast oversimplification, he said Trump won because they played the sexist card and voters didn't want to vote for a mixed race woman. Inherent in that, of course, is, well, Biden's a white guy and he beat Trump, so he would have won again. And when he was asked that question directly, do you think you would have won? He kind of demurred, but he also kind of said he thought he would because Trump got 6 million less votes in 2020. Kamala Harris got 6 million less votes in 2024 than Biden got in 2020. I don't think it's a good look. If you're a Democrat, I do not think you want Joe Biden out there. I know what he's doing. He's trying to pre-butt some of these negative books that are going to come out about his presidency, most notably Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson's book on May 20th called Original Sin, which I've already pre-ordered. I know what he's doing. I just don't think it's good for the Democratic Party. Dana Cruz. Dana, thank you so much for your donation. Who and when do you think will be the next Supreme Court vacancy? Okay, so I just went through this, and this is not a guarantor, but here's age-wise who's the oldest. Clarence Thomas is 85. Samuel Alito is 83. John Roberts and Sonia Sotomayor are 70. I could see Thomas or Alito. I mean, they're both in their 80s. I could see either of them leaving at this point. Particularly with Trump in the presidency. So, maybe in the next year or two, they head out. Again, both of those are Republican appointed justices. So Trump would obviously replace him with a Republican, and it wouldn't change the overall 6-3 conservative majority on the court. But that's who I'd have to guess, unless it's a stunner. I mean, I can't imagine Sonia Sotomayor, who was pressured, at least by the liberal base, to retire before the 2024 election. I can't imagine at 70, she's going to be like, okay, I'm going to do it now when Donald Trump would appoint a conservative to replace you. Let's see. Just scrolling. Jack Moon says, what is Bernie Sanders supposed to do? Use a bus and spend 8+ hours traveling every day. Right. This is my point. As I said earlier about Bernie Sanders taking a private plane. I get it logistically. He's going in between places that probably there aren't direct flights on, or they don't work with his speaking schedule. I get it. I'm just saying it doesn't look great for a politician who's running the fighting oligarchy tour to be flying private. That's all. Paul Olson. Paul, thank you for your donation and always for your support. Paul says, Kristi Noem testified this week and thumbed her nose at that 9-0 SCOTUS decision. Why are people's hair not on fire? The 9-0 SCOTUS decision on bringing on due process. I mean, look, Trump has lawyers who say, actually, the decision affirms our ability to do this. My hair's not going to be on fire until we have Donald Trump, like right now, I think what Donald Trump is doing is not him, but his lawyers are doing is kind of fighting a semantics battle and a kind of legal language battle with the Supreme Court and the judicial branch. This does not strike me as Donald Trump thumbing his nose at the Supreme Court just yet, because they haven't really issued a totally final, what they've issued on a lot of these things that are in front of them are kind of partial rulings, not complete rulings. If Donald Trump, if Donald Trump says, I'm running again, and the Supreme Court says the 22nd Amendment says you can't, and you can't, and he says, well, I'm doing it anyway. Yeah, hair on fire. Right now, not hair on fire. Again, if everything's a mountain, there are no molehills. Yogball, what's to stop Donald Trump from declaring martial law and canceling the midterms? I know there are people who think this is the kind of stuff that's going to happen. I just don't see it. I don't see any evidence that that's his plan. I think he has authoritarian tendencies, no question, but I don't get the sense he is willing to totally suspend American democracy. I don't. Again, some people say that's naive, but I don't. I know people worry about it. I get it. Bill Reeve, Bill, did I miss a question from you? Because Bill made a donation and says for my previous question. Bill, let me see if I can find your question that I missed, or just post it again for me, Bill, and I'll find it. Let's see. But thank you for your donation, Bill. Very much appreciated. Rich G, thank you for your donation. Will we see the YouTube plaque on your wall at 100,000? Do I get a plaque at 100,000? That would be amazing. If so, yes, I will absolutely prominently display it. Hold on. I'm going through. Some people are saying I'm missing their questions. Jorg Meindl says there are at least 2 Germans watching, so you must avoid baseball analogies. I have to make an analogy about soccer, about football for you, Jorg. I'll make a Thomas Muller reference about what I'm doing. Hold on, I'm trying to go back up. SD Guy 1234 says, "Hey Chris, love seeing your channel grow on YouTube." Me too. Thank you. That's very kind. Hold on, I'm just scrolling back up. Let's see. All right, I'm going to try and go through these, and if I missed you, I'm sorry. I'm doing my best that I can, and I'm trying to get to people who haven't asked questions. Jimmy Grote, what's your prediction for the future of the traditional news media? Seems like independent content creators like you and others on Substack are gaining steam. Thoughts on the Washington Post under Bezos? So, look, I do think at some level, like the war is over for attention and content, and I think independent people have kind of taken over. Every time I see somebody who I've never even heard of, who's an news influencer on YouTube, who has 2.5 million subscribers, I'm more convinced in that than ever. I just think people want to consume content that is relatable, authentic, and independent, and big media organizations are going to struggle to do that. That does not mean that big media organizations don't matter. They do. Their news gathering capabilities fuel everything that all of us do. But it does mean that I think they're going to continue to shrink. That's the Washington Post, CNN, everywhere that hasn't diversified. New York Times diversified into recipes, into Wordle, into the puzzles. But journalism is going to struggle to support itself at that mainstream media legacy media level. So I'm not super optimistic about that. I do think for people like me, I feel like we're on a cresting wave here. Like, it feels to me like this is a moment where people are like, I want to look to other sources than these big mainstream media outlets for information, for analysis, for context. And I'm kind of like, here I am. So I do think there's a moment there for it. But I don't want mainstream media to die. I think we need mainstream media. I just think it's going to keep shrinking. That's a great question, though. BK739, how do you think the interaction between Pope Leo and Trump will pan out? I believe Pope Leo took Trump's spotlight as the most famous American. Yeah, well, remember, Trump has clashed with the Pope in the past, Pope Francis. So I would not surprise me if Pope Leo says something about immigration and needing to welcome the least among us or something like that, and Trump pops off and says, like, no. We'll see. I think Trump likes that there's an American president, and at some level, American Pope, and at some level, he probably takes credit for it, even though that's ridiculous. So yeah, I'm interested to see how they interact, whether actual interaction or just kind of like the missives sent back and forth. Let's see. Jeff Lindstrom. Why is no one tying together the UK trade deal mentioning Rolls-Royce and Trump's use and love of Rolls-Royce engines on his private plane, Air Force One, that stays down here in Palm Beach? Yeah, I mean, yes, Donald Trump is going to do what's good for Donald Trump. Always has, always will. So it does not surprise me that that's part of it. RBH 2021, thank you for your donation. Very much appreciated. RBH 2021 says, Happy Mother's Day, Chris. Hope you all have a good weekend. Fun fact, tomorrow is my 2003, 2025, 22nd wedding anniversary. And then Sunday is Mother's Day. So big weekend in the Cillizza family. And thank you for your donation. Very much appreciated. Ben Trinker, who do you think Democrats are going to field for the Georgia governor's race? As a Georgia, Keisha Lance Bottoms does not inspire. So I think they should pick Jason Carter, who's the grandson of the former President Jimmy Carter. I don't know that you can win that race, but I think he would be interesting. I don't think Keisha Lance Bottoms would win. I don't think Stacey Abrams would win. But I think Jason Carter would be interesting, Ben. So we'll see. Let's see. Rich G. I'm looking at buying a Tesla Model 3 or Y. I think you have one. Overall, how do you like it? Anything I should know before making a move? Also, congrats on 80,000. Well, so, okay. I have a Tesla Model 3. I bought it 5 years ago when we weren't even sure the company was going to succeed. My biggest worry in buying the Tesla was not like Elon Musk. It was, am I going to be able to get this service because the company might go under? In those 5 years, obviously a lot has changed in terms of what it signifies to own a Tesla. To me, it's just a car that I think is cool, that I like driving. I'm not like, it has been my most fun car to drive. It is different than any other car I've driven. I'm not a car guy, but I love that car. So that's the deal. I get that people hate Elon. I get that. Fine. Again, for me, it's been a great car, no big issues, although I just had to replace 4 tires, which costs a huge amount of money. Anyway, but it's been good for me. Jack Moon says, your parents, correcting me, thank you, on the 14th Amendment and eligibility. Your parents have to be American citizens, but the child can be born anywhere according to the 14th Amendment. Thank you for that. Sorry, you do not have to be born in the U.S. You have to be born to American citizen parents to run for president. So thank you, Jack. Daniel Price says, no, Jack, if the foreign country they are born in is on a U.S. base or installation, then that is considered American soil and they are a citizen. If they are born on the country's soil, they're not. That was my understanding, that you had to be born in a place that is American territory or soil. Oh, boy. Let's see. Oh, I'm glad to see there is an active conversation about what car somebody should buy and whether or not they should buy a Tesla in the comments. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just reading through people going back and forth on that. So yes, I think the place you are born does matter. I think it has to be in American soil is my belief. Zyphon White, in terms of the UK trade deal, do you think it is benefiting on paper the UK over the US? Points to Trump struggling to prove how good tariffs are economically. I don't totally know. I think the trade deal is really a trade blueprint. It's not real, like it's a sketch. The details, as far as I can tell, are pretty light right now. I think they were like, okay, we've agreed to make this happen, but we're going to figure out later, all the specifics. So I'm not sure I want to declare winners and losers yet on it. After further review with Steve Tower, how concerned should we be if the Surgeon General nomination goes through? That combo with RFK could do some lasting damage to this in the next generation. Yeah, I mean, I know I have a friend who's a doctor who does not think this woman is qualified to be Surgeon General. We'll see. I mean, look, I think part of this is people focus so much on what Donald Trump is saying or doing. I actually think one of the stories will be, what do the people he has appointed in some of these agencies that are creating regulations, what do they do that has long-lasting effects? Like Trump is going to get a lot of scrutiny and a lot of attention. It's like, some of these agencies, even the Surgeon General, might not, but what they do could have obviously long-lasting impacts. Yeah. Aldo Marino, question, where's the eventual banana peel for this administration? Will it come from SCOTUS or from abroad? You mean the thing that kind of brings them down? I mean, I think Donald Trump has brought himself down with this tariff policy. I don't think there's one thing out there that's going to lead to Republicans running away from Donald Trump en masse. I just don't see it. I'm not convinced that that's where this is headed. I think Republicans are going to be with him. Could he go into the high 30s in terms of approval? Probably. Could he go lower than that? Probably not. Patty Porco, hey, Chris, just found your channel and love it. Thanks. Awesome. The other day, we heard Kristi Noem say, well, they will not be bringing back Abrego Garcia or any of the other deported folks. How do we proceed with this now? Well, there's legal challenges to this, and we'll see how it shakes out. But no, I do not anticipate them trying to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia back, unless they are absolutely forced to, and I don't know they will be forced to. Love this name, Joe Mama. Joe, thank you for the donation. Joe says, love honest reporting and fair shots at both sides. I'm center left, but appreciate voices that hold left voices accountable to bad policy and tone deafness. What's your future U.S. political predictions? The only prediction I will make is unpredictability, and I think Democrats win the House in 2026. those are the two that I feel committed to. Let's see. Dan W., late to the party. How dare you throw shade at my home airport, O'Hare? It's the worst. Serious question. Why did it make your list? Delays, too big. I have to fly out of it, so I don't have a choice. Too big and constant delays because of weather. Constant. Way more than Minneapolis, and way more than Detroit. Man, that thing stinks. Bill Reeve, have you changed your mind at all on how much of our democracy is in danger now that Trump is putting significant pressure on media, universities, certain law firms? No. I think our democracy is pretty resilient, Bill. Is Donald Trump pushing hard on traditional norms? Yes. Do I think things will ultimately hold? I do. Is that naive? Some people will say yes. Oh, Brad David corrects me. Yes. Sorry. I said Clarence Thomas was 86. He's 76. Sorry. And Alito is 73, not 83. So 76, Clarence Thomas, 73, Alito, 70, John Roberts and Sonia Sotomayor. But 76, I could see Clarence Thomas being like, this is probably it, and it's a Republican president, so maybe I'll do it now. But thank you, Brad. Sorry, I added 10 years to their age. Golly. Brad David, can you explain what Substack is? Brad, thank you for the donation, and of course I can. Look, all it is it's a newsletter service. So I write 2 to 3 things a day, and if you subscribe, you get that delivered to your email inbox, and you can read it or not read it, but it's, political thoughts and analysis, some video, some written. So it's just a newsletter service. Substack is nothing but a platform. It's what you put on it. What I put on it is political analysis throughout the day, week, month, year. Again, I make about half of the content free, and people always say, well, I don't know if I have the money to be a subscriber. You can be a subscriber, a free subscriber to Substack, and still get a lot of the content. You can also be a paid subscriber. The word subscriber is a little weird, but free subscribers get a bunch of the stuff delivered to my your email inbox, and you can get it, read it, etc. Paid subscribers get all that stuff and some extra goodies. But basically all it is, do you want to read what I have to say about politics? If you do, sign up for it. ChrisCillizza.substack.com. Thanks. Sometimes I assume people know more about it than they do. Let me just make sure I'm not missing it. Roberta Kiri. Trump at 45 will never get lower or higher. No political person will ever break 45. Not possible. Well, he's already gone lower. He's in the low 40s, Roberta. But I agree with you. It's very hard in this political environment to get over 50% approval. It just is. Barring some major national event or catastrophe that you're judged to have handled well by the public, it's really hard. I agree. I think 50 is the new 60. We used to say a president who is popular is at 60% approval. That's never going to happen. 50%, you're pretty popular. I would say if more people approve of you than disapprove, you're probably pretty popular, because I think increasingly 40s is where people are going to be. Let's see. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anybody else. I got to run here in a minute. Brett Green says, I don't care who makes the car. If it's a good car, I'll get it. Tesla is a good car. I really like it. Jack Moon says, Jason Carter has declined to run. He has, but I think they might go back at him. Steve Longmore suggests I do VAR, video assisted review, as my sports analogy, calling the game, making everyone mad. VAR does make everyone mad. I like that. So I'm the guy who comes in and I'm like, and then I point, and I decide whether it's a penalty or a red card. I like that. VAR. Patrick Murray says you get a silver plaque for 100,000 subs on YouTube. 4 a.m. Pizza. Hey, Chris, are you straight? Yes. I just mentioned I've been married to my wife for 23 years. Yes, I am. Hold on. Seth Taylor, I snap my fingers and you are in the Biden campaign the morning after the Trump-Biden debate. What's your advice? Drop out of the race because you can't win it and you're going to bring the Democratic ticket down. See, that was so easy. A lot of people correcting me. Yes. Clarence Thomas is 76. Alito is 73. I said they were 85 and 83. Not sure what I was doing, but they are the eldest members of the Supreme Court. That was my general point. 4am Pizza says, thanks, Chris. I didn't mean that as an insult. Mary Clearius. You're not insulting me. I was just saying, like, I've been married for a long time, so I am to a woman, so I am straight. Let's see. I think that's about it. I am going to head out. I'm over an hour, so I've taken a lot of your time. If you're watching this live, thank you. And if you can, click that thumbs up as soon as possible because I need it. If you are watching this on replay, subscribe to my channel and go check out my Substack, chriscillizza.substack.com. If you want to donate, you can do it here via the super chat to me, or you can do buy me a coffee, which is in my YouTube bio. So anyway, that if you want to donate and support what I'm building here, the easiest and freest way is to just hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. We are over 81,000, which is amazing. If you want to make a financial donation, buy me a coffee, YouTube super chat, or become a subscriber over at Substack, a paid subscriber over at Substack. I will be back next Friday. Thank you to everyone. As always, I am hugely thankful. The growth we have had on YouTube continues to wow, amaze, astound, and make me hugely thankful. So let's keep it going. Everybody have a good rest of your Friday. Have a good weekend and take care. I will be back making videos on Monday.